Hello, I'm Gwen Hill from Pine Ridge Baptist Church, Sunday School Department, Ladies Class, and we are studying Exodus 17. The children of Israel have been slaves of Egypt for some 430 years. They are now following Moses and the Lord, and they're in the desert going toward the Promised Land. They don't know at this time that it's going to take them a 40-year journey. Just you and I know that. So they were on a 40-year road trip, but in spite of God's gracious provisions and His protection, they were never satisfied. All of our blessings, are we as grateful as we need to be? Did you thank the Lord for life this morning? For the blessings that He's already given you today? They were never satisfied either. And as we travel life's path over the valleys, the meadows, the bumps in the road, we need to be reminded that God is with us and that God can make a way. Verses 1, 2, and 3 of Exodus 17. The whole chapter 17 is kind of an echo of chapter 15. So let's learn some more. The whole Israelite community left the desert of Sin and traveled from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water there for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why are you testing the Lord?" The people were very thirsty for water, so they grumbled against Moses. And they said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt? Was it to kill us, our children, and our farm animals with thirst?" Let's look at these verses just a little bit. Rephidim is the name means a place of rest, but soul rest is not possible unless it's accompanied by trust and by peace. These people didn't have that at all. So they were uncomfortable for physical demands at this moment. They quarreled with Moses. They blamed him for there not being water to drink. They had already saw God's provision when they were at Moriah and the water was too bitter to drink, and the Lord instructed Moses to throw the tree in the water, and it made it sweet enough for them to drink. But here they are, days later, they're thirsty, and they're blaming Moses. They didn't learn anything the last time. Moses told them they should have went to the Lord first. This whole trip, this is to take a slave people who had no power, no voice, and complete dependency on a master, a physical master, to turn that people around into an obedient group of people that listened to the Lord on high, who listened to Jehovah God, who trusted Jehovah, who had faith in Jehovah, and allowed themselves to be shepherded by the great shepherd. They weren't learning their lessons very well. And they were really testy. They were really angry. You know, when people are tired and thirsty and bewildered, they didn't know what to expect. They were fearful. And they were thirsty. Manna was wonderful, and they had it every morning, but they needed water. Their livestock needed water. The human body is only set up to go for about 3 days without water. I don't think they were completely out, but they saw that it was not going to last long what they had. So they accused Moses of having an ulterior motive for bringing them out of Egypt, that he wanted to kill them. Made no sense. Made no sense. But when you get into a mob mentality, logic and sense, they don't rule the day. When you let your temper flare, when you go into a rage, your logic and your good sense is not evident. And that's what we're seeing. Moses records again in 4 through 7. So Moses cried to the Lord, "What can I do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me to death." And the Lord said to Moses, "Go ahead of the people and take some of the older leaders of Israel with you. Carry with you the walking stick that you used to strike the Nile River. Now go. I will stand in front of you on a rock at Mount Sinai. Hit that rock with the stick, and water will come out of it so that the people can drink." Moses did these things as the older leaders of Israel watched. He named the place Massa because the Israelites tested the Lord when they asked, "Is the Lord with us or not?" He also named it Meribah because they quarreled. Let's unpack those a little. So Moses cried to the Lord. This is the New Century Version, and if you were looking the word up in Hebrew for cried, actually what this is saying is he screamed out. Here Moses is distressed. Is Moses thirsty too? You bet he is. Is Moses tired? Yeah, he is. Is he frustrated? But he didn't fuss at the people. He didn't cry out to the people. He knew where help would be, and that's where he went. He cried out. He screamed out to God, "I need you here. These people are so unruly, they're about to kill me. What do you want me to do?" I'm not going to read it to you, but I want you to go look at it and read it. Write this down. John 8:59. You know what that is? Jesus had gone home to Nazareth, and they had asked him to read that day in the synagogue, and he did. He read Isaiah chapter 53 to them and told them, it talks about the Messiah coming, and he told them, in this day, this has been fulfilled. They were so incensed because they had watched Joseph and Mary raise this young man. To call himself the Messiah, how much blasphemy could that be? And they're in their rage and in their mob mentality, they were about to kill Jesus. They were going to throw him off a bluff. But wonder of wonders, Jesus just walked through them. It was like they didn't see him, like he was, or like he had an aura around him that they couldn't touch him. He just walked through them. This is what he's telling Moses to do. This angry mob of people, this angry shouting, shaking their fists people, just walk through them and follow me. He says, and you go right now. Don't stop and think about it. Try to argue with me about it. Just do what I tell you. Moses is learning too. He tells him, he says, you follow me, and I'll meet you on top of a rock. We are told that we can't look God the Father in the face and live. So how did God go stand on a rock and show himself to Moses? I don't know. Maybe it was a pre-incarnate Jesus he saw, but I kind of think it was maybe lightning or a light show. There is something here that I love to think about when I'm in need, when I'm in stress. I don't need to cast doubt on the ability of my God to watch over me. I just need to follow him, to listen to him. If you will go on the internet and put in your search engine water from the rock, and then when it comes up, click on images, you'll find a display of a rock that is on Mount Horeb. It is a big old rock, but there's a cleft right in the center, and there's area where there's a lot of erosion. Let me read that to you. The Bible says that at the Lord's command, Moses smote the rock in Horeb, and fresh water poured forth, supplying the Hebrews and their flocks for the 2 years that they encamped there. This rock shows evidence of erosion from massive amounts of water originating inside the split down the middle, despite being situated in one of the world's driest deserts. Erosion channels run out into the plain where the Hebrews would have been encamped, which is precisely what one would expect based on the description in Exodus 7:17. There's a picture of it there. It is amazing. I saw this in National Geographic as well some years ago. Our God, there's nothing he can't do. All right, verses 8, 9, and 10. At Rephidim, they stayed there for at least a month on this one occurrence. The Amalekites came and fought the Israelites. You know how they fought? They were marauders, Bedouins, also marauders, and they were much like wolves. If they're going to attack a flock of sheep, they wait till one sheep or a weak sheep stays at the back of the flock, and they attack that one that's older or sick or weak and young or just plain foolish. Much like Satan does us. If you stay in the Word, if you stay with Christian people, you keep yourself where you're supposed to be, it's harder for Satan to win over you. But if you isolate yourself, if you don't enjoy his Word, if you don't study his Word, if you don't pray and listen, Satan will prey upon you. And that's what the Amalekites did. In verse 9, so Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some men and go up and fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill, holding the walking stick of God in my hands." So Joshua obeyed Moses, went to fight the Amalekites, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held his hands up, the Israelites would win the fight. But when Moses put his hands down, the Amalekites would win. This is one of the tribes of people that the Lord is going to intend for the Israelites to defeat when they take over the promised land. They're not ready yet, but the Amalekites are attacking. So Moses looked at his young men and he chose the young man that he's mentoring. He's choosing Joshua to go fight the Amalekites. He says, "I want you to fight tomorrow." But if you'll look at the verbiage on this, while Joshua was getting ready to fight here, the three men, Moses, Aaron, and Hur, went up the mountain. Okay? Moses, when he got there, he was praying. It was a symbol of him praying and of God's power when he took the staff, the one that he hit the rock with, the one that opened the Red Sea, the one that was the show of God's power. He held it up with both hands over his head. And as long as he held it up, Joshua won the battle with the Amalekites. Let's think for just a minute. Where did Joshua, an ex-slave, a young man, come up with implements of war to fight the Amalekites? Do you remember? What happened when the Red Sea crashed back down? Who was caught in that flood of waters? Egyptian soldiers. The best that Pharaoh had. They would have been equipped the best that Pharaoh could have managed. They would have had light armor on. They would have had swords. They would have had spears. They would have had possibly bow and arrow. I don't know. But they had everything in their day and time that was good for war. They would have had it. So when they died, the Lord had their bodies to float to the surface and come up on the shore to be washed ashore. They would have been coming with their implements of war. That's where Joshua got it. So Joshua's fighting. And he would glance up every once in a while and he would see Moses holding the rod up, and he would know, my God is with me. With my God, I can do anything. This is the God who orchestrated the plagues in Egypt. This is the God that opened the Red Sea. This is the God who feeds me every morning with manna. This is the God who shelters 2.5 million people under a shadow, a shade, a cloud by day in the heat of the desert. And this is the God that has a pillar of fire at night as part of their protection. My God can do anything. And he was reminded of that every time he looked up at Moses. Well, I don't know about you, but I can't hold my hands up for a long, long, long length of time. And Moses was older than me. So Moses' hands and his arms began to tire. And as he began to tire and his hands come down, the Amalekites, hard to say, would win the battle. So the two men that were with him, Aaron, who was Aaron? Aaron was his brother, his older brother. And who was Hur? Well, we're not totally sure. But Josephus tells us that Hur was Miriam's husband. That would make sense to me. But Hur and Aaron were taking care of Moses. Verse 12 and 13. Later, when Moses' arms became tired, the men put a large rock under him and he sat on it. Then Aaron and Hur held up Moses' hands. Aaron on one side, Hur on the other, and they kept his hands steady until the sun went down. So Joshua defeated the Amalekites in this battle with his sword. If you're reading the New Century, it leaves out with his sword, but if you're reading the King James or the NIV, it adds that phrase, has that phrase in there, with his sword. All right. You know, if we're going to do God's work, it's not that we can do that work by ourselves. Most of the time you need help. It was normal in this day and time, if they were going to fight, they fought early in the morning. And by mid-afternoon, they were done. But they fought all day long. Moses was up on that mountainside, holding that staff with Aaron and Hur's help all day long. That was a feat unto itself. You know, we need to support each other. Christians need to support each other. How do you support other Christians? Mainly with prayer. With heartfelt, sincere, on your knees, in privacy, entreating your Lord, and in corporate, praying for each other. We need to be prayer warriors as we help others fight that battle. The Amalekites would become extinct. Then the Lord said to Moses, this is the Lord speaking, Write about this battle in a book so people will remember, and be sure to tell Joshua, because I will completely destroy the Amaleks from the earth." Then Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner." Moses said, "I lifted my hands toward the Lord's throne. The Lord will fight against the Amalekites forever." In King James, verse 16 says, "For he said, because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." The Lord tells Moses, he said, "Moses, I want you to write a book, and I want you to include in that book this battle, what happened today. And I want to make sure that you have Joshua read it." He's commending Joshua. And Moses did that. We just read it. Was this the first altar that we hear Moses building? And this is the only time that we see in the Bible where Jehovah God is called "the Lord is my banner." When you go into battle, you have your colors. Even if you are a football team, you have your banners, you have your colors. It means, in this instance, my God is following me. My God is following me and will champion me and will protect me. It's a wonderful story. I can picture Joshua with his sword in hand, a hand that was not trained to hold a sword, wiping the sweat off his face as he looked for another Amalek to battle against, or another Israelite who needed his assistance to fight the common enemy. There's lots of enemies out there. Satan owns a lot of souls, and we need to wrestle those souls away from him and show them Jesus Christ. We'll see you next time. I hope you have a good week. Goodbye.